Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I welcome you all back to this next video. I know it's been a while. This will be part 6 of Before Crippin. This portion will be about the visions that I've had during my life. Some of them happened later in life, and some happened when I was young as 4 years old. What's strange about this is that the one that I actually had when I was 4 years old was about an end time event that a lot of people are speaking about now. To make it a little plainer to you, I'm going to go in a little detail. In 1975, I was in a foster home with Alberta Thomas. She was a Jehovah's Witness at the time. And I had an aunt who lived in the Bronx, New York, who wanted to see me. So my mom, she went through the necessary steps and she took me and my brother out to the Bronx to see my aunt. At the time, it was winter and Central Park had frozen over, and there really wasn't much to do. But because a couple of city kids from Los Angeles, had never seen the snow before, we we had a lot of fun in it. The main attraction for me was when we went over to the Statue of Liberty. We got on these boats and we went over to Liberty Island, and we went all the way up into the Torch, and we were looking down over the harbor. But the frightening part about it all is that when we were coming back, everything was blurry for me after that. The next thing I knew, I had a dream that I was in that boat on the way back, and the Statue of Liberty had fallen off the pedestal that it was on, and it was floating on its side, and the face was looking at me directly in the eyes, and this spooked me out. I never spoke to anyone about it, but I will admit that up until the age of 12 years old, I would sit on my grandmother's porch on 97th and I would look eastward, and I would always think about the Statue of Liberty floating in the water and what it actually meant. According to many Christian and Islamic scholars, as well as mainstream scientists, they predict that sea levels will rise from which New York City would be underwater. And many of the images that you see today of the Statue of Liberty floating in the water is supposed to be a representative of that fact. One of the next visions that I had was during the time of the 9/11 issue, the big hoax that it was. And there was a guy named Khalid Sheikh Mohammed who was on one of the most wanted lists that they had. Well, I was I was very much into this, and I would read all of the Newsweek articles and things like that. And one night I had this dream that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed had gotten captured, and they had him inside of a swimming pool, and they had some device in his mouth that would cause pain, but they would duck him under the water to try to get information out of him. So I woke up and I told the brother that I was in the cell with named Talim, another Muslim brother, the dream that I had. And wouldn't you know it, it wasn't probably a week or two that they announced on the news that they had captured Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. And then I think about a month or two after that, it came out that they were actually torturing this man. The next vision that I had was something that was quite strange to me. I had a dream that I was in Saudi Arabia and I was, going through the desert, and I was headed up this hill. And as I was climbing up to the top, I didn't hear any people or anything like that. And this guard, ironically wearing the same uniforms that they wear today, was calling me in Arabic, Waqif, 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 which means to stop. By this time, I had gotten to the top of the hill and I looked over down at the Kaaba and I didn't see anybody. I guess this is the coronavirus era where no one is making Hajj. I really don't see any other explanation for that, to not be able to see people making Hajj during the Hajj season. But if that one right there wasn't enough for you, this one right here strikes a little personal because it has to do with my mother and my home that I'm in now. I had a dream that one day I was walking up Avalon Boulevard, and as I got to the market at 103rd Street, the sky all of a sudden was filled with what looked like meteors falling from the sky. And I started to run all the way up until I got to, the street that I live on, about a mile and a half away. And as I made it to my driveway, my mom looked out and she told me to go in the house and just stay there. And all of a sudden now today, we're hearing about supposedly asteroids falling from the sky. I have my own view of what that is, and I'll speak to it later on the topic of flat Earth versus globe Earth. And whether you know it or not, it is probably the greatest deception that man has ever had to encounter. And it's been right in front of our faces, and we just couldn't see it. And the last vision that I had was another one that I really couldn't understand because I had a dream that I was free and I was no longer in prison. And I was doing some guest speaking and I was invited to come into a church. And there was a guy who was up on the podium and he was speaking, and I can't really remember what he was saying. But as he started to say something, an earthquake happened and everything was shaking violently. And I was next to a table and I climbed up under the table. And even though I know this this chapter from the Quran now, at the time that I had the dream, I didn't know the chapter of the earthquake. And I was underneath the table and I just saw myself in the dream reciting Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. إذا زلزلت الأرض زلزالها وأخرجت الأرض أثقالها وقال الإنسان ما لها يومئذ تحدث أخبارها بأن ربك أوحى لها يومئذ يصدر الناس أشتاتا ليروا أعمالهم فمن يعمل مثقال ذرة خيرا يرى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. This verse in the Quran is speaking about a time when the earth will start to shake. And, most of the things that happen during earthquakes will be happening. This verse says that people will start, asking questions about what's wrong with the earth. And the verse says that Allah has inspired it to do so, and that it will start to throw up things from the grave and so forth. But Allah warns that when it's all said and done, who had done an atom's weight of evil will see it, and he who did an atom's weight of good will also see it. As you can see by now, a lot of the things that you learn in Islam are very personal. And my experience as a Christian, I believe, should have been as such as well. But in the culture in which we live, we have separated not only society's actions and deeds and what they live for from their religion, we've basically promoted secular lifestyles to the point that we lose all touch with an active working relationship within the confines of what was divinely intended for us. And Islam had brought me full circle with that. And even when I read the Bible or I go back and I look at stories in the Bible, I'm able to appreciate the authentic nature that should have been there instead of what had been passed down to us by people who had edited and misconstrued or misinterpreted verses and passed it on to us as being true. Just because we live in a society that is of no resemblance to what we read in Scripture, you should always see the things that are around you as a challenge to your belief and how you're supposed to be. This is something that I started doing at an early age. And as I got older, I believe spiritual maturity took me out of the childish behaviors that I was practicing as a young adult. When I was in the penitentiary, many people that know me, some still called me Thumper, but most of all, people knew me as Jamal. And for people to start accepting me as Jamal and not expecting for me anything less than being Jamal was to me a success. I didn't worry about what people thought a man is supposed to grow up to be based upon their expectations of him. I put for myself what I believe Allah wanted for me and what the ultimate goal should be, which is in the hereafter. This life is only a test, and the things in which He shows you is not meant for you to think that you are a prophet. Sometimes Allah will give you warnings that you may tell other people, just like people do it in this life. For instance, when you're in prison, sometimes your own enemy can come to you and warn you about something that's about to take place because they have love for you. That's a lot of respect, and people don't give that very easily. So you should best believe that even if Allah had warned people that He was going to destroy about the things that were going to come, then it was only a warning. This concludes this segment. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. There'll be much more to come. And if there are any things that you would like to know, please leave a comment in the comment sections and I will answer it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.